All right, hello. Thank you for agreeing to talk with me today. I'm going to ask you some questions and I hope we can have a conversation about your college experience with others. First, I just wanted to get a bit of your demographics, your age, sex, race, and then we'll continue.
Okay. I'm 21 years old. I'm a female and I'm white.
What is your major? What year are you in school? And how many classes do you typically take?
I'm a senior. Um, my major is exercise, sport, and movement studies. And what was the other question? Oh, how many classes do I typically take?
Mhm.
I usually take, I want to say around 4 to 5 classes a semester.
Usually about 16 hours.
Yes.
All right, cool. Very interesting. How do you know when you've been successful in school? Like, what indicators do you usually use to measure your success? And like, what differences exist depending on like about the type of class you're taking, whether it be like a general education, a gen ed, or a major? Like, do you use those to signify if like you've done better or worse?
Um, Gen eds were more just take them to pass them, but it was all based on previous knowledge that I had already learned. So for the most part, it was just about maintaining my knowledge of it, I guess. And then as far as my major classes go, those are all new concepts to me. So I wasn't nearly as focused on the letter grade that I got at the overall end of the semester. It was more of like how I learned what I missed on the tests and everything after going back and like asking more questions about it just to make sure that I knew what I was talking about.
So you're saying the more you understood, even if it did come back like disappointing, you still like would use that to determine if you actually got something out of it.
Yes. So like if I didn't get something that I wanted out of the test, I would just ask to either like go back and go through it and like find where I went wrong and like what concepts I could have known better.
Very
So
cool. Um, could you tell me about a class where you were concerned more about the grade you earned than how much you learned? Like maybe the opposite of what you were just saying?
definitely. All of my history classes, I was less concerned with what I learned versus what letter grade I got out of it. It's just it wasn't going to be important to my major, so I didn't figure that I cared about it as much.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Why did the grade become more important than what you learned? Was it just because you knew that?
Maintain my GPA 100%.
Interesting. What messages have you heard from others, maybe in your major or just in your same college, that led you to believe your GPA is more important than actually learning?
Getting into grade school is really hard, so you need to have the highest GPA you can possibly have to better your chances of getting in. And nearly every single person in my major has to go to grad school to get a certificate to practice what we're going to do. And so that's really important.
So it's just kind of been pushed in your face the whole time then,
Yes.
knowing that that was the end goal.
Yes, the end goal was a good GPA.
How could, if you had a teacher, how could they have created a classroom where students value personal and educational growth over those like disappointing grades?
Um, I have found that I had a class that was very hands-on and it was more show what you can do rather than take a test on like what the steps are, which I found much better. My major is more hands-on than most though, so I understand if that's something that can't be done across the stage, but um, I found that them doing that was better because they would help. They would use like constructive criticisms to like say like why are you doing that, or they would ask different questions while
So
you were doing it to make sure you knew it.
they'd focus on the middle, like getting there rather than what you get at the end.
Yeah.
How might a grade centric conversation lead to a productive outcome where both were satisfied? Like your teacher and you, with a, even if it wasn't a good grade, that you were still satisfied with it. How would like having a conversation like that, would it lead to you accepting grades that are not to your standard more often, or would you say it just like angers you more or neutral?
I would say that For me, I would rather have that discussion with the teacher and understand like where I went wrong and everything, because it would help me understand why I didn't do as well as I thought I did.
That's
So
understandable.
I would appreciate talking to teachers about it.
Exactly. How do teachers increase or decrease your stress on grades? If you say like, even if you're in one of those like meetings with them talking about your grade, or just in general, how do they usually affect your stress levels?
Um, as long as the conversation is going smoothly back and forth, I don't ever typically get too stressed out, but it's more when the teachers really push things in your face and are really hard about these individual separate grades all make up, a huge chunk of your grade, and you have to get every single one of them done or you're never going to pass. Because there's a lot of teachers that start off classes by saying like, if you don't do this, you're not going to pass.
Yeah, that's understandable. So like if they just kind of make it seem like they're not going to be stressful, then you're not stressed. And if they feel like you are going to be stressed, you're going to be stressed.
Yes.
That's very understandable. What factors or characteristics make a professor approachable or unapproachable, even if it's what you just stated?
Um, I think as long as they have like a friendly demeanor and you don't feel scared to go talk to them, like they're not, they don't act higher than you, even though they are. I think it's easier when they're more personable and you can actually instigate a conversation rather than like wait to be asked something.
Yeah, totally. How do you measure success besides grades?
Um, for me, since I have such a hands-on major, I kind of gauge my success or my like knowledge of what we learn based on the ability to actually go out and use that information that I've gained. But usually just any time that I can answer a question right off the bat and I don't even have to think about it is a sign that I've learned what I need to.
Yeah, for sure. If you can just like take what you've learned and maybe like discuss it to somebody else, or you just know what you're talking about.
Yeah, if I can explain it to a 3-year-old, I know what I'm talking about.
Very cool. Using that, could you describe for me a time when you've earned a grade that was lower than what you thought you had earned? And if you talked to the teacher about it, how did you feel about this conversation and the outcome of the conversation and or grade? And if you didn't, why did you make that choice to not talk to them?
I actually had one class, it was a kinesiology class where we were learning about the shoulder and all the different movements it could do. And I did receive a lesser grade than I thought I was going to earn. And I did talk to my teacher about it, and it actually went really smoothly. We like pulled my test out and were able to look and see like which concepts I was missing. And so from there, he was able to demonstrate the movements within that shoulder blade and actually help me understand it more. So I may not have ended with the grade that I wanted, but after going back and discussing it, I learned.
Very interesting. Did you feel better after you had done that, just overall, even though your grade didn't change?
Yes, I did, because at that point I knew that I had learned it no matter what the grade said.
And how did you respond to him? Like, did you just like understand what he was saying and move on, or did you ask for any extra instruction or a grade reconsideration?
I didn't ask for a grade reconsideration because at that point, what I was tested on and what I knew at that time was reflected in the test. It was after going back and asking more questions, I had found out that I could have learned some more before the test. But yeah.
Interesting. How did others respond? Did others find themselves in this similar situation or no? Or do you know?
I knew a lot of people that got grades around where I did. And instead of going and talking to the teacher, they just kind of brushed it off and said like, oh, well.
How did having this interaction with your teacher, how did that impact your approach the rest of the course for the rest of the semester?
It made it really easy to go and talk to him because I knew that he would help me in any way he possibly could, no matter what I was doing in the class, regards to grade wise.
So it made it obvious that he was approachable.
Yes, yeah.
How did it impact your approach to the or I mean, what advice would you offer to another student who earned a grade lower than what was expected, whether it be in that class or another class?
I would encourage to ask your teacher to go through the test with you, as long as they're nice about it and they don't get really annoyed with like you trying to defend your answers or anything. In my major, you can't really defend your answers, but like in an English course, I guess you technically could. But as long as you're both talking just like really nicely and you're not arguing and getting defensive, I think it can be really constructive to the relationship you can build with the teacher.
So you're saying like if they offer it, then you should take it, and if they don't, then maybe just keep your distance?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did this experience impact what you put on the end of the year course evaluation if your university did this?
I try to keep in mind all the times that I've asked for help and actually been given help. I've had classes where I've reached out to professors via email, especially with like COVID and everything, and they did not ever email me back, and I'm still waiting on a response. And so that definitely goes into my course evaluations, because I mean, if I can't talk to you about anything, how can I expect to really get the best knowledge that I can of the subject?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. What could you tell me about your relationship with that specific teacher you were talking about earlier, that you went in and talked to them about your exam grade?
He's one of my favorite teachers. He teaches a lot of different subjects in my major, and if I have the option of him or another teacher, I would pick him any day.
So it definitely made a difference to be able to know you could go in there.
Yes, and he's really great, and he's even offered, like, if you need help in any other of the subjects that he doesn't teach, to still come to him and he'll try to find you an answer.
Very cool. How, based on that conversation or your relationship with him and your other instructors, how do you usually communicate? What differences does the type of class and the way it's delivered or taught, how does that change like your communication with them? Like if you're face to face, do you usually go into their office hours? If it's on Zoom, do you usually just Zoom with them? Does it change?
Um, my classes that are face to face, I'll typically go up to them either like after the class is over, just to try and see, like, is it something that I need to go into their office hours for? If not, can you help me right then? And if I do need office hours, I'll definitely go into those. But with like COVID restrictions on our classes here, we still have a lot of people that are doing online classes. And so teachers have been much more open to meeting on Zoom, instead of having you come on campus to talk about something, which is nice because they're willing to work with whatever schedule you need.
Yeah, definitely. So you say it's been pretty easy to get those modes of communication in. It hasn't been a struggle.
Not as far as I've experienced.
Very nice. Over the course of your college careers, or just college careers in general, students often earn grades that are lower than what they expected. Could you think of a time specifically about a class you liked and did not earn an A and still walked away with a sense of accomplishment?
Yes.
What kind of emotions did you experience, and like what are some of the strategies you use to handle the situation?
I tried to focus on the fact that tests are graded to where you should be within like the top 10% of knowing what you are being tested on, and sometimes that can get pretty difficult. So I always tried to think of it as long as I felt confident in what my answers were, like the grade itself wouldn't really be as detrimental to me as I would expect it to be. Strategy wise, I mean, just make sure that you're communicating with your teacher or professor. Make sure you're not just like getting a bad grade and just walking off and not worrying about it, because that just shows that there's something more for you to learn.
Mm-hmm. So just keep your emotions neutral most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, of course, like, get excited when you do good, but don't get like crazy upset when you don't do good.
That makes sense. I mean, I guess that's how you can get through. How do you think instructors evaluate your success, whether it be a lower grade or a higher grade?
I think I've had a lot of teachers that kind of just judge you based on what grade you leave their class with, which I think can be kind of detrimental to the way that your relationship progresses. But I've had a lot of teachers that they don't necessarily just take that final grade in. They also like take the time to think about how often that student went in for help, or how often I came to ask them for assistance on something. Because there's more than just memorizing the stuff that you need to know. It's actually being willing to work to learn more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. Going back to the class that you did not earn an A in, that you still walked away with a sense of accomplishment, what could you tell me about your relationship with that teacher or professor?
That's another one of my teachers that I absolutely adore. He's one of the best teachers I've ever had. Um,
Did he say anything or um, like hint at anything that made it seem like it was okay to earn a lower grade, or did you just do, and then was anything said about it? Was nothing said about it? Or, just in general, how he just portrayed his class and like what you should get
um,
out.
at, at the beginning, he let us know that half of our grade was going to be based off what we could actually do in person because it was one of those like tactile learning classes. And then he said that the other half of the grade was just straight multiple choice tests. And he was very clear about the fact that just because you do well in one doesn't mean that you're necessarily terrible at the other. So, I mean, he made it known that to get an A in the class is not to be the absolute best you can be, and to get a C in the class isn't the best you can be. I mean, he was very clear that the final grade wasn't what determined how well you did.
So would you say that made you feel like better going into like knowing you did get the A, or did it make you more nervous thinking you weren't going to get an A at all? Like, did it stress you out
In
to a
his
certain
class,
extent?
no, I wasn't necessarily worried about not getting an A. It was more just I felt like I had a safety net of like, okay, if I don't do as well as I thought I did, it's okay because he said that that would happen or that that could happen, and it's okay.
Yeah, I feel like that definitely helps students out a lot. Um, all right, so we're almost done now, but what else could you tell me about earning grades that are less than you expected that would help me better understand your college experience as a whole?
Um, Grades aren't everything. I don't know.
Well, okay. Well, if that's all you have, then thank you for your time. If you think of anything else, you're always welcome to contact me and we can talk more.
Okay, thank you.